Good evening and welcome. It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana 104.5 FM. I will be your host for this evening. My name is Mr. Garza, and I'm here to let you know that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU, UCIMC, or, as we like to say on the televised version, off to a bad start, televised version of this show, UPTV. These views are our own, and by our in this instance, I mean myself. Anyway, welcome. This will be the last show of the year. I think I'll take the rest of the year off after tonight, probably. Anyway, yeah. That's an old joke, isn't it? As for UPTV, I have no idea when you're going to see this. YouTube, you'll see it as soon as it's finished, but yeah, who knows? It's all messed up. I have no idea when anything comes on anymore. But anyway, I'm here. You're here. We're going to do our best. So this is sort of a mixed bag of things. I don't really have a theme so much as just kind of, I'm starting, generally speaking, even in my own personal life, I'm starting to sort of look forward rather than look backwards or be, all upset about the present that we're caught in. Things are still not good. I mean, it's not like something has changed in the sense that suddenly, the bad guys aren't being bad anymore or anything like that. It's just that there's an end in sight to some of this stuff. So we're going to start transitioning to just less alarmist stories, maybe, hopefully. Boy, sorry, I keep bumping the camera and it's bouncing. I apologize for that. I'm probably too close to the thing. Anyway, this has been a year it's been 4 years really of just, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Oh no, what are we going to do about this? Oh, this is terrible kinds of stories. And I'm really, really hoping that we can get into more in-depth analysis of immigration patterns and trends in legal thought and political thought and things like that, and just away from all of this, like, oh, the bad guys are just being worse and worse every moment. And it's not just guys. I'm using that term in a sort of a generic person sense. But anyway, so we'll start off with something not necessarily hopeful, but looking forward here, and entitled National Immigrant Advocates Vow to Keep Up the Pressure as Biden Asks for Patience. Immigrant advocates eager to break with 4 years of Trump administration policies are raising concerns about President-elect Joe Biden's plan to move cautiously to avoid making matters worse. While still publicly supporting the Biden transition team, they're imploring the incoming administration to move with urgency. This is a matter of life and death, said Guerlaine Youssef, the executive director of the Haitian Bridge Alliance, because tens of thousands of migrants still face dangerous conditions in Mexican border towns. We have people literally dying in Tijuana, in Matamoros, all over Mexico because of those policies that stop them from coming up for asylum, she said during a call with reporters on Tuesday. During a press conference in his home state of Delaware, the president-elect sought to reassure immigrant advocates that he will move to undo many of President Trump's immigration policies. But Biden acknowledged that many of those changes would not happen on day one. The timeline is to do it so that we, in fact, make it better, not worse, he said. During the campaign, Biden promised to undo many Trump policies at the border. He has pledged to restore asylum protections and to end the program that requires tens of thousands of asylum seekers to wait in Mexico for their hearings in U.S. immigration court. But he now says those efforts could take months, not days. It's a matter of setting up the guardrails so we can move in the direction, Biden said, so that we don't end up with 2 million people on our border. Biden's comments echoed those made by two of his top policy advisors in an interview with Spanish wire service EFE that was published on Monday, which seemed calculated in part to temper expectations among the Spanish-speaking populations in Latin America and avoid triggering a new migration crisis at the border. Processing capacity at the border is not like a light that you can switch on and off, said Susan Rice, the incoming domestic policy advisor, according to a translation of the interview transcript. Migrants and asylum seekers absolutely should not believe those in the region peddling the idea that the border will suddenly be fully open to process everyone on day one. It will not. On a call with reporters, immigrant advocates across the country urged the incoming administration to move quickly. So many people have fallen into danger and kidnapping and homelessness while waiting for a chance to seek asylum in the U.S., said Linda Rivas, executive director and managing attorney at the Las Americas Immigrant Advocacy Center in El Paso, Texas. So we definitely have this sense of urgency that we want to convey. In the interview with EFE, Rice was asked whether the Biden administration will move to end the public health order that has effectively closed the border to migrants during the coronavirus pandemic. Rice did not give a clear answer to the dismay of some immigrant advocates. The Trump administration used public health as their sole rationale for closing the border, said Michelle Heisler, medical director of Physicians for Human Rights, on the call with reporters. There's no basis for that, said Heisler, who argues the incoming administration could begin to process asylum seekers at the border without jeopardizing public health in the U.S. But overall, immigrant advocates seem willing to give Biden and his team the benefit of the doubt, at least for now. This is a new vision, and we're quite excited about, said Frank Sherry, executive director of America's Voice, a pro-immigrant nonprofit in Washington, D.C. We're going to push them every step of the way so they don't take their foot off the pedal. So, like I said, not exactly hopeful, but sort of looking forward. I mean, looking forward, what we're going to see, in my opinion, and this comes a little bit of experience here. I mean, I've run a couple of different organizations for many years now, and I have an understanding of how groups of people move and make changes, and particularly how organizations and businesses adopt new ideas and new changes. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly. You've got to get buy-in all up and down the line. And so this is going to sound like, Biden apology here. But it's true that this can't happen all at once. And it's also true that they do have to not create this notion that, okay, borders open now, everybody can come in, because they can't all come in at once. It would be like a stampede. So that's going to be the hardest part, I think. They want to let people in, or they want to resolve these log jams that are holding people back. But at the same time, they don't want them all coming in all at once. They want it to be a slow, steady stream of people coming in. And that's going to be hard to achieve, because everybody is going to say, I've been waiting the longest, it's my turn, and they're all going to just want to just rush at the open door once it's open. So it's going to be difficult. And I can understand that sort of hedging that's going on here with some of these interviews. And I can see where that's coming from, but I can also see why people are saying, hey, we need to move fast and it needs to be urgent. So I suspect that the opening up of our immigration policy, let's say, is going to, the unfolding will be a slowish one, too slow for people that are in a hurry for it to happen, and possibly too quickly for the infrastructure to, support it. So it's going to be a tricky balancing act. And I'm hoping they can do it in the midst of doing everything else that they're going to be trying to do all at once. So I personally am going to give Biden a lot of slack in terms of how long it takes him to do things, because I think it's going to be very difficult to just kind of generally do what he wants to do, even leaving aside all the undoing that needs to be done. And there is a whole lot of undoing that needs to be done. So undoing is not going to really look like progress necessarily. It'll be a good headline every now and then. Biden rolls back Trump's plan to do X or something, cancels out Trump's executive order for Y. But it's not going to, it's sort of pulling us back to where we ought to be, not pushing us ahead. So the most difficult thing about the incoming Biden administration, their job is going to be how to undo all the things they need to undo while still moving ahead in ways that are positive and needed, and balance all of that so that that movement can happen in a way that people are aware of it and feel it and, are enriched by it, let's say. So yeah, this is going to be really tricky. It's going to be a really tricky thing. I'm hopeful that he'll be able to do it, and that, maybe if the Georgia Senate races go the right way and we have at least a more or less a tie-breaking Democratic majority in the Senate, that, some bigger things can get done quickly. But I'm not going to count on it. And if that doesn't happen, then there's going to be a lot of uphill slogging to be done. Because one of the reasons, let's face it, the Republicans allowed Trump to do a lot of things that he did. I mean, I think a lot of people are assuming that all Republicans were on board with everything that Trump did. And I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of what they sort of stood back and allowed to happen, they have a general sense of not liking big government, of not enjoying at least big government in the sense of, in the way Democrats understand that term, or might understand that term. So I think a lot of what they were doing was sort of saying, okay, we'll let Trump just go in and break everything so that we can have more control over how it's put back together. And so we can, guide it in ways that we want it to be guided. So if he breaks just about everything, that's fine with us, because then we have a greater say, or at least we have the opportunity to say how it's rebuilt. Whereas, in the past, you can't go back and undo what happened in the past. So I believe that the Mitch McConnells of the world, that's what they were thinking. Let's get as many judges in there as possible, and then who have our, way of looking at the world, and then we'll let Trump just break everything, and then when it's all being put back together, we can, even if we're in the minority, we can sue the administration, the Democratic administration, and say, oh no, you can't do this. And then all our conservative judges will say, yes, that's right, you can't do it that way. And, that's kind of the big plan, the big picture plan that they had. So I suspect it was more that than you had all these fat cat, if we can call it that, fat cat Republicans. I use that expression to describe, your standard cigar smoking, top hat wearing kind of rich guy who sits in a private club and just counts his money all day long. That stereotype there. Those people were not part of this, uber right-wing conspiracy theory crowd that Trump attracted. But they did like the fact that he was just bulldozing his way through all sorts of things that they had seen as impediments for a long time. And frankly, they would have been glad to give him another 4 years to ruin things like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all that kind of thing. You know, who knows how far they would have let him go before they put the brakes on. But thankfully, we don't have to find that out. Anyway, I'm going to move on. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. And so I don't know how that connects up with Biden's need to move slowly. Oh, I guess it connects up because he's got to fix all this stuff that Trump broke, which is going to be a battle for each and every fix, is going to be a big fight wherever it doesn't align with what the Republicans in Congress are going to want it to be, or want it put back together as, and then he's going to have to fight to push forward. So there's going to be a lot of fighting, a lot of just arm twisting and patting on the back and backroom deals and all sorts of things that are going to have to go on that people are going to just have to understand is part of the process. You know, it's not like a new president can come in and just wave a magic wand and everything's the way they want it. I mean, look, Trump had 4 years to, trash things and rewrite them in his own way. And he did a lot, but he didn't do a lot that was sort of permanent. Well, a lot of it was executive orders, which are just gone. You know, as soon as he's gone, they're gone, or they can be gone. And so as far as new legislation and new stuff, I mean, if you think about it, they got a bunch of conservative judges. They got a huge tax cut. And that's the bulk of what was accomplished in 4 years in terms of actual concrete, these things have changed, and now this is how they are going forward. There are lots of regulations and things like that Trump kind of pushed through that made happen. A lot of regulatory changes, I guess I should say. Not really new regulations, but regulatory changes or removal of regulations that will need to be put back or fixed or something that, you know, that's going to be a fight. But, you know, in terms of constructive progress, there really wasn't much of anything that happened in 4 years. And so in that sense, we're, I guess, very lucky. But that just shows you get a bulldozer kind of wrecking ball kind of person like Trump, and you support him with an entire Senate that pretty much stood back and said, go ahead, do what you want. And that's all they managed to accomplish. So what Biden's going to be able to accomplish is going to be kind of on the slim side, I think, compared to what a lot of people are hoping or hopefully not expecting, but probably expecting. Anyway, I'm just rambling on and on and on. I need to move forward here. So the next article is entitled, New Stimulus Package Could Help Immigrant Families That Were Left Out the First Time Around. If you recall, on the last stimulus, if one of the, you know, like you're married to someone who's not an immigrant, you couldn't get a stimulus payment. So hopefully that is changed. Of course, the new stimulus package is now in doubt because of Trump once again. But anyway, we have hopes for it. This April 23rd, 2020. What? God, not again. All right. This April 23rd, 2020 file photo shows President Donald J. Trump's name printed on a stimulus check issued by the IRS to help combat the adverse economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Sorry, I can't show you the photo, but it's there. The federal government withheld those relief payments to U.S. citizens married to immigrants without Social Security numbers. A new $900 billion stimulus package approved by Congress this week would provide benefits to those mixed status families. But Trump has threatened to veto the measure. When the pandemic forced Chicago to shut down, Citlali started buying grocery gift cards for the undocumented families in her little village community. As the virus spread through Little Village, the Chicago public school teacher continued donating to neighbors. I was donating money because there's been so many deaths. When I heard that we were going to get the stimulus money, I said, "That's wonderful. I'll use the stimulus money for donations," she said. But then I read I may not be getting anything, and I was in shock. Citlali has been married to an undocumented immigrant for more than 20 years. Her husband hasn't been able to adjust his status because immigration laws would force him to go back to Mexico and live there for years before he could return legally. They file their taxes together, but he uses an individual taxpayer identification number, or ITIN, which is issued by the Internal Revenue Service to immigrants so they can pay taxes. Since Citlali's husband has an ITIN number, she was ineligible for any stimulus money this past spring from the CARES Act. So she didn't get a $1,200 check, nor did she receive an additional $500 for each of her 3 children. I am an American, and when I was slapped with this, I was like, I didn't need the money. I was more like, how dare you tell me that I don't have the right of other Americans, she said. WBEZ is withholding Citlali's real name because her husband is undocumented, of course. Thank you. There are about 244,000 mixed-status families like Citlali's in Illinois, and these families were excluded from receiving any money from the $2 trillion COVID-19 relief bill that was approved in March. Unfortunately, under the CARES Act, even if one adult in the household did not have a Social Security number, that disqualified the entire family from getting any payment, said Fred Tsao, Policy Director for the Illinois Coalition for Immigrants and Refugee Rights. Under the new relief package approved by Congress this week, mixed-status families would receive the $600 stimulus check for each family member with a valid Social Security number. The government will not be able to withhold checks for an entire family if one member doesn't have a valid Social Security, according to U.S. Representative Jesus Chuy Garcia. I heard from individuals married to U.S. citizens that were ineligible to receive first rounds of stimulus checks, said Garcia. It was and is simply unfair and un-American. The $900 billion relief package is now waiting for President Donald Trump to sign it. However, Trump said this week that he might veto the bill. The new law also goes back and fixes parts of the CARES Act, Tsao said, adding that Americans like Citlali and her children are now eligible to get stimulus checks they missed back in March. Paloma, a professor at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, is also married to an undocumented immigrant. She wasn't surprised she didn't receive a $1,200 stimulus check earlier this year. I went to the website to check, and sure enough, I got a message saying I wasn't eligible, she said. It's unfair because we pay taxes. Paloma said this is one example of the challenges mixed-status couples face. She met her husband years ago in North Carolina when Paloma was in graduate school and he worked in the logging industry there. They met for the first time at a Spanish mass that Paloma attended because she was feeling homesick. Later, they saw each other at a Mexican grocery store and he asked her out. They dated for 3 years before they got married in 2018. Paloma's husband said it's unfair to ask everyone to pay taxes and then withhold the benefits of paying taxes to some. I felt like I wasn't part of this community, he said in Spanish. It feels unbalanced. We are all asked to pay taxes, but then we're excluded from getting benefits. I felt excluded. And you were. So, well, as is usual in the 2020 and a couple of years before, we're waiting to see what Trump does before we know what's going to happen. Once again, this person has kind of held the entire country captive to his own whims, and he's doing it again. Now, indeed, in this instance, he says he thinks that it should be a higher benefit. It should be $2,000 per person, not $600. But he also says that they need to take out parts of the budget, the annual budget renewal thing, which the stimulus bill was rolled in together with the year-end need to approve the spending bill. And so it's a kind of a big mess. And we'll see what happens with it. But I guess we can hope for the best. And Biden will be a president soon, and maybe he'll be able to get something done. And he won't leave us guessing every 5 minutes and wondering what he's going to do next, which is a good thing. So our next story, sorry, I'm doing a lot of asides here today. And I'm really bumping this camera a lot. It's bouncing all over the place. Okay. This is entitled, How Investor Immigration Could Help Address Unemployment in America. There is an old saying that goes, it is better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. And there is a lot of darkness around these days. The world is experiencing the worst economic decline since the Great Depression. Well over 10 million Americans are unemployed. The country needs economic revival, is sinking into debt, and could use a lot of new jobs. Of all the options available to America in the area of immigration, the EB-5 Investor Immigrant Program is the one that can best serve as the light in the face of this darkness that has beset us. While investor immigration is not a complete solution for all America's problems, for decades now, the U.S. EB-5 program has served the country well by creating jobs and stimulating economic development. Indeed, as a letter from U.S. lawmakers recently pointed out, between 2008 and 2015, as the nation struggled with its last economic downturn, the EB-5 Regional Center Program was directly responsible for $20.6 billion in economic investments and creating or saving 731,792 jobs. Wow. Currently, each investor who comes to America invests a minimum $900,000 and creates 10 new American jobs under the Regional Center part of the program, or $1.8 million and 10 new American jobs under the direct investment part of the program. It is no secret that investor immigration can be a great stimulus for a country's economy. For that reason, many other countries are competing with America in this field. Countries like Great Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Portugal, Turkey, Malta, Bulgaria, Antigua, and St. Kitts and Nevis. Nevis? Just to name a few. An investor visa program is not a citizenship program. Applicants still must accrue 5 years of residence in America before they become eligible to apply for U.S. citizenship. Furthermore, they still need to maintain 2.5 out of 5 years of physical presence to be eligible to apply for citizenship. Excuse me. As for the concern of investors being able to buy their way into America, the point to be made is that the EB-5 program is not an America for Sale program. It is a jobs creation program. On top of that, investors have never made up more than just a small fraction of the total number of immigrants who come to the country. Indeed, of the approximately 1 million immigrants who come to America each year, only 10,000 are investors. In fact, often wealthy investors are not attracted to immigrate to America for themselves per se. They are more attracted to immigrate for the sake of their family, especially their children. For them, North America offers better education opportunities, good health care, strong economic prospects, a clean environment, and access to large markets. For us, they bring jobs and investment. Most importantly, the program pays for itself.